Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, Sudan stays away from regional peace talks in Ethiopia about its 3-month war. Sudan's foreign minister asked for Kenya to step back as chair of the IGAD mediation efforts because of alleged bias. Also, rumours that one of Senegal's biggest cities may twin with a city in Russian-occupied Crimea has stirred up a diplomatic row with Ukraine. And we meet a Japanese aficionado of Senegal's national sport who's headed out to the country's second city to train in the ancient wrestling art of Laamb. But first, Sudan's refused to take part in regional peace talks about its devastating civil war. Monday's negotiations were arranged in Ethiopia's capital, Addis Ababa, by East African Regional Bloc, IGAD. But Sudan's armies accused the chair, Kenya, of bias and insisted that its president, William Ruto, be removed from the meeting. At least 3,000 people have been killed in Sudan ever since a power struggle between the army and the RSF paramilitary force spilled onto the streets. IGAD suggested that a military deployment to help protect Sudanese civilians and guarantee humanitarian access be arranged. I'm joined now for more on the situation in Sudan by Yasser Youssef Elamin, the head of the Sudanese American Physician Association. Thanks so much for joining us now, Yasser. First of all, do you have much hope that this latest attempt at peace talks for Sudan will do much to make your job with the lives of displaced Sudanese much easier?
Thanks a lot for having me. Obviously, we're all very delighted to see Sudan neighbors come together, trying to help Sudanese parties reach a peaceful resolution to the conflict. However, as you just said in your report, that the army and the government decided to not take part of the negotiations, accusing Kenya of being biased. Obviously, this was a disappointment for us. And it just reaffirms that it sounds that both parties are feeling that they could find a resolution militarily to this conflict. And the ongoing war is obviously is causing a huge obstacles in the face of humanitarian work and is putting Sudanese people under unbelievable pressure and suffering.
So what is the scale of the humanitarian crisis? How bad are things in Sudan itself? We've been hearing that about 3,000 people have been killed, which is a huge number in itself. But earlier you were telling me that you think that this may still fall short of the true scale of the damage. How so?
Yeah, so I think overall the humanitarian situation in Sudan is terrible. Sudan is a poor country even before the world, which is dependent on international aid. And now you have the war aggravating all of that. I think the number of 3,000 is terrible, but it's underestimation. This number is based on people who've died only in the hospitals. It does not take into account people who may have died in their homes or people who died in their cars or people who didn't make it to hospitals. And also it takes into account only people who died as a direct result of the war. So it does not take into account people who died indirectly as a result of not having access to health care or to access to a hospital for dialysis or to get treatment for a heart attack and so on.
And what about the aid that is available? Is it getting to where it needs to go? Anything else other than these attempts at ceasefires that we've seen so often since the war began in mid-April that you think would make a tangible difference to humanitarian efforts?
I think increasing the aid is important. Certainly, the amount of aid that has reached Sudan does not meet all the demand. But I think a bigger and important issue that we could act on is making sure that even the amount of aid that made it to Sudan is being utilized in the proper way and is reaching the end user. I think due to the near collapse of the government, most of the aid that has already made it to Port Sudan or made it to Sawakin Airport are not reaching the end user due to issues with supply chain, due to government inability to get the aid to the hands of people who deserve it. And on top of that, I think the government is complicating things more by not giving the visas to international aid workers. So international aid workers are dependent on local staff, and there has been a significant number of visas that have been denied. That includes physicians, nurses, people who could not only deliver aid, but actually take care of patients and save lives.
So you're calling for more to be done to get those visas to international aid workers into Sudan. But with regard to the work that you do, you're a diaspora organization. How have you been able to help, bearing in mind that, the majority of your members are I guess, ordinarily based outside of the country? And what have your priorities been with the resources available to you?
Yeah, so we took advantage of the fact that as a diaspora organization, we know the landscape in Sudan. Our team has been working tirelessly in Sudan since the war erupted to sustain the public health care and also to provide direct services by our own team. We have more than 70 staff in Madani of Al Jazeera, which is the second largest city in Sudan and a hotspot for refugees. We were able to navigate through these difficulties, but yet we're limited by the unsafety, by the lack of medical supplies, by lack of central planning. And that's why we call for more visas for international aid. We call for supporting the infrastructure that would allow good distribution of aid as well.
Thank you very much. Yasser Yusuf El-Amin, the president of the Sudanese American Physician Association, an organization doing what it can to help support humanitarian efforts in Sudan as its war continues. Now, in other news, Nigeria's President Bola Tinubu has been chosen as the new chairman of the 16-member West African regional bloc, ECOWAS. He takes over from Guinea-Bissau's leader Umaro Sissoco Embalou and has already called for a pushback on the deepening insecurity that the region's gone through recently. West Africa has seen 6 military coups since 2020, including in Mali, Guinea and Burkina Faso. And the Senegalese city of Thiès has found itself at the heart of a diplomatic row after Russia boasted of a successful meeting with its mayor. The talks were rumoured to be about thrashing out a partnership between Thiès and the Russian-held Crimean city of Sebastopol. Ukraine's accused Mayor Babacar Diop of cooperating with terrorists. Sam Bradpiece talks us through.
The war of words currently raging following the Russian ambassador's visit to the Senegalese city of Thiès appears to be a reflection of the widened scope of geopolitical struggle between Russia, Ukraine and African actors. Ukraine is angry because it believes that the city authorities in Thiès want to twin with the Russian-held city of Sebastopol, which is in Crimea, annexed from Ukraine in 2014. It accused the mayor of Thiès of willingly collaborating with a nation of thugs. That's how Ukraine described Russia. The mayor of Thiès hit back, though, issuing a public statement denouncing the Ukrainian claims as unfounded, but not really giving too much specific detail. I spoke with the mayor on the phone, who explained to me that negotiations were underway for some kind of cooperation agreement between the towns of Thiès and Sebastopol, but he insisted that any talk of twinning was premature.
Sam Bradpiece there for us in Senegal. Now, it's just 6 months to go until elections in DR Congo, and tensions are on the rise. Several opposition figures have been arrested, and some leaders have accused the government of rolling back civil liberties in a bid to win at any cost. Our correspondent sent us this report.
Arms outstretched, Martin Fayulu, one of DR Congo's opposition leaders, imitates an eagle, the nickname given to him by his supporters. The eagle is also a symbol of victory. After 3 delays requested by the Congolese authorities, he is finally able to hold his meeting. For several weeks, Congolese opposition politicians have been decrying political harassment. Protests have been repressed, houses searched. They can point to many examples, starting with the arrest of Salomon Kalonda, an advisor to Moïse Katumbi, who is suspected of colluding with the M23.
There's harassment because an opposition that offers an alternative to building a true state is embarrassing for a silent regime that doesn't act.
With 6 months to go until the presidential election, the campaign is shaping up to be very tense. According to this political analyst, the rise in tensions can be explained by insecurity in the east of the country and by the history of the incumbent governing party.
It's a civilian government that arrived after 40 years of military government, so there are authoritarian elements that remain. There was also a certain will from the opposition party that had not been in power for a long time and wants to stay.
Staying in power will be the challenge for the UDPS, which is set to wage its first campaign whilst being the ruling party. The UDPS is preparing to line up behind President Felix Tshisekedi. It rejects the opposition's accusations that his rule has led to sustained attacks on civil liberties and persecution of his political rivals.
There is a very big difference between the way we were treated when we were in the opposition and the way in which today's political opposition are treated. We're not saying that everything we do is perfect, but there has been a big change.
Presidential and parliamentary elections are due to be held in December. Even though some opposition parties are fielding candidates, Martin Fayulu has said that his party will not participate unless there is a complete revision of the electoral roll.
Well, earlier I mentioned the controversy brewing in the Senegalese city of Thiès. Now we get a chance to revisit the city, but on a lighter note. It's at the heart of the country's national sport, Laamb, and has even attracted hardcore practitioners from around the world. Caroline Lamberley tells us more.
This is Shogo Wazumi, a wrestler from Japan. After competing at a national level back home, he set his sights further afield. He's now based in Senegal, and his mission is to master Laamb, a local wrestling style that's become the country's national sport.
I just finished practice today with the team I'm practicing with right now. Every time I practice, I feel myself getting stronger bit by bit, so I feel a lot of joy and growth.
Laamb is anchored in ancestral war rituals and blends physical combat and acrobatics. Victory is declared when an opponent's back touches the ground. It's hugely popular throughout the country, and Wazumi first discovered this kind of wrestling during a trip to Senegal with Japan's aid agency in 2017. Several years later, in 2022, he decided to relocate to Senegal full-time and now lives with a community of wrestlers in Thiès.
The reason I like Senegal is that the Senegalese people have very warm hearts. In Senegal, as in Japan, we have a culture of hospitality, which in Japan is called omotenashi. But in Senegal, it is called teranga. When I came to Senegal, I was fascinated by this. Senegalese people live together with their families, and they all support each other in this way. That's my kind of culture, so I fell in love with Senegal.
Since moving to Senegal, Wazumi has also set up an academy to help around 36 students prepare for the next Youth Olympics. They're due to take place in Dakar in 2026.
Well, that's it for Eye on Africa for now. Thanks for joining us. Do so again. Till then, take care.